In the 1960s, ordinary Americans risked jail to help women have abortions. They called themselves the Janes.
Those women would have faced collectively over 100 years in prison. And while they were awaiting trial, Roe was approved by the Supreme Court.
Keep your rosaries off my ovaries!
5 decades later, Roe v. Wade, the case guaranteeing women the constitutional right to an abortion, is struck down.
It's disgusting. Women are not incubators. You cannot force someone to give birth.
Tonight, we travel to the Republican stronghold of Alabama to witness the reality of America's abortion ban.
Women are going to get hurt. Women are going to die.
And meet the new generation of Americans risking everything to provide women access to abortions.
When injustice becomes law, resistance becomes mandatory, and we are the resistance.
Home to 2.5 million women, Alabama is considered by many as the heart of America's Deep South. But it's the country's 5th poorest state and has one of the nation's highest infant mortality rates. On the same day Roe v. Wade was overturned, Alabama enacted the Human Life Protection Act, banning abortions. On the day the Supreme Court handed down its decision, there were countless women in clinics right across America waiting for an abortion. I want to speak to the people who witnessed firsthand the moment that 50 years of abortion rights were suddenly extinguished. Hi, Kathy.
Hi, nice to meet you.
So how different is this place right now?
Fridays, this parking lot used to be full, probably 15, 20 cars in the grass over there, and it's nothing today.
The Alabama Women's Center in Huntsville was one of only 3 clinics operating in the whole state when abortions were still legal. As a result, it became a hotbed for anti-abortion protesters. For the last 10 years, Kathy Zentner has escorted women past the very vocal demonstrators into the clinic. So this is completely empty right now.
Completely empty and very quiet. On very busy days, every chair would have been filled. And on the last day, every chair was filled.
How many women would have been in here on that day?
I think there were 35 patients scheduled that day. I'm sad for the women that can't get the medical care they need. I'm sad for the staff that can't do the job they're trained to do.
As Kathy shows me around the shuttered clinic, it's incredible to think that these quiet, empty spaces were once bustling with activity.
We had a woman here from Louisiana that arrived at the clinic at 3:30 in the morning. They had started medicating her in the morning, so she had to have her abortion that day. And it was about 4 o'clock in the afternoon when she was finished. So I walked up to her, put my arm around her, and said, "You know, you were the last person in Alabama to get a legal abortion." And she goes, "I know, and I am so grateful."
Kathy says on busy days, as many as 45 women would come through the clinic doors. Now that this centre and Alabama's 2 other clinics are closed, it's estimated almost 1 million women of reproductive age no longer have access to an abortion.
This is Dr. Williams, one of the providers.
Hello, lovely to meet you.
You too, Sanithia Williams.
Kathy introduces me to Dr. Sanithia Williams, who was working here on the last day abortions were legal.
We, to be honest with you, kind of took a moment to gather ourselves. I personally was pretty upset once I got the message from our lawyers that we were not going to be able to continue care. I took a moment to cry a little bit, to be honest with you. Yeah, it's really tough. I'll be honest with you. This is really dangerous for people, right? People are going to die because of these decisions.
Dr. Williams continues to provide general reproductive care to women at the clinic. and they still receive phone calls from those seeking abortions.
Good afternoon, Alabama Women's Center. How can I help you? Yeah, no, I'm sorry. Abortions are illegal in Alabama now. I can't help you with that. I'm sorry. There's nothing I can do. You have to do your research. It's illegal for me to help you. Yeah, I'm sorry. You're welcome. Bye-bye.
How many calls are you getting like that a day?
Right now, that's a lot. It's the majority of the calls we're getting. A good, I don't know, 30 calls a day.
30 calls a day?
I would say at least, yeah.
How do women react when you tell them that they can't come here for an abortion?
I'm astonished, actually. They're just surprised. Some of them are angry.
I think the overarching thing was shock and some desperations.
Were they trying desperately to convince you to go ahead?
There was one person who said, well, can I just come next week instead? There was one person who was like, I can give you extra money, and like really just trying to bargain to figure out if she could get care. Here in Alabama, we have one of the worst restrictions. We have a total abortion ban with attached criminal penalties. So penalty of felony conviction with punishment up to 99 years in prison. And so I think that's really scary.
Dr. Williams says it's Alabama's poorest women who will be most affected. 75% of women requesting abortion in the US are in poverty or in the low-income bracket.
I know for a fact that Black women and other women of color are going to be the most impacted, and it's only going to get worse with this.
Women are going to get hurt. Women are going to die again from illegal abortion, but they're also going to die from carrying pregnancies. The maternal mortality rate in this country is despicable, and they're going to force women who can't handle a pregnancy into carrying one.
What do you think is the next evolution in this battle for anti-abortion activists and evangelicals?
Well, they like to say that birth control pills cause abortion. They say that IUDs cause abortion, and they're going after those next.
Reproductive rights have been under attack in America for the past 50 years. Abortion was mostly illegal until 1973, when Jane Roe, an unmarried pregnant woman, challenged laws in Texas which criminalized abortion. The Supreme Court decided the right to privacy protected the right to an abortion. It energized conservative forces who lobbied state lawmakers to pass their own rules and challenge Roe v. Wade in the Supreme Court. After 5 decades, Roe v. Wade was finally overturned by the Republican-nominated justices, giving the states the power to write their own abortion laws. So I've come to the city of Birmingham, which is in the middle of the state of Alabama, and I'm here to meet a man who's been working towards this moment his entire life. Hi, Eric.
How are you?
Eric Johnston was a Republican candidate for the Alabama Supreme Court in 2010 and is now an attorney. How does it feel personally to see the decision handed down?
Well, do you enjoy winning? It's always good when you, for a lawyer engaged in law practice, to do what your client needs you to do. And I feel like that justice was done not only to the unborn child, but to the Constitution.
For 30 years, Eric has spearheaded anti-abortion advocacy in Alabama.
These are photos that were taken in 1991 of a pro-life rally at the Alabama State House. It's been a continuous effort. I mean, it took over 100 years to get rid of slavery, and so 50 years is about half that time to deal with the abortion issue.
Eric and other anti-abortion activists hit the streets as anger sparked in evangelical communities.
It is now the tactic of choice in the war against abortion, blocking the entrance of a clinic, attempting to shut it down.
This footage from 1989 shows the lengths activists went to prevent clinics from providing abortions. The following year, Eric founded the Alabama Pro-Life Coalition. He began drawing up legal challenges and pushing for law reform, which saw abortions slowly decrease and clinics close in Alabama.
It's basically what we were doing through the 90s and into the 2000s, because we knew the Supreme Court would not reverse Roe. So we were just trying to establish laws that, again, protected the health care of women and would reduce the number of abortions. And so we were basically chipping away at the Roe opinion.
How many abortion laws do you think you've passed or drafted in that time?
Probably 20 or more.
In 2019, Eric helped write what's been called America's harshest anti-abortion bill, stripping exceptions for rape and incest.
Yeah, what the chair's about. He did not make a motion.
As this footage shows, it sparked furious reactions from Democrats in Alabama's Senate at the time. It became law the day Roe v. Wade was overturned.
We wanted to make it very clear that this is a clean bill. This is very straight to the point of what viability doesn't matter. It's an unborn child.
Can you understand why the lack of any exception for rape or incest is morally repugnant to a lot of people?
They make that as a big argument, but probably about 1% of rapes result in conception where abortions are done, and about 0.5% on incest.
But I mean, they're real people, whether they are a small percentage or not. I mean, don't they matter?
They are, but you have a great potential for abuse. How do you determine if it was rape or incest?
There's a legal system, no, that can establish that.
It's very difficult for the legal system to determine, if someone says, well, I was raped. Well, you got to prove you were raped.
Eric says he'll fight any future debate allowing abortions for victims of rape or incest in Alabama, and will go after anyone caught helping women access abortion pills in the state.
If the drug is supplied by someone in the United States, they could be indicted and tried for felony murder in Alabama for having provided that drug to the woman here. But
you will be fighting that, and you will be enforcing that in terms of the medical abortion.
Oh, yeah.
What is the ultimate goal of the anti-abortion movement and lawmakers like yourself?
Well, I think the ultimate goal is to stop or minimize abortions, even if they're done in California and Illinois and New York or wherever. It's not mission accomplished. Now, the fight that's coming ahead is going to be different.
After Roe v. Wade was overturned, 14 states immediately criminalized abortions. And in total, 26 states are expected to ban or heavily restrict the procedure. Like Alabama, many of these states only allow abortions in cases of medical emergency or severe fetal abnormality. But no exceptions are made for victims of rape or incest. With America now divided between abortion and non-abortion states, I want to know if this is the new conservatism in modern America, or has it become something else? So I've come to the Supreme Court in Washington, D.C. to meet someone who spent her life serving the Republican Party. Hi, Anne.
Good to finally meet you.
Good to meet you too. So this is looking very different.
Yes. As soon as the decision came down, the walls went up.
Really?
The violence and threats of violence from both sides, actually more coming from my side this time, is just amazing.
Why have they put these fences up here at the Supreme Court?
Protect the justices. The justices have been personally threatened.
Anne Stone couldn't be more Republican if she tried. She's pro-guns. She founded the Women for Trump group, is a practicing Christian, and her ex-husband even worked for Donald Trump when he was president. So in many ways you are, what many would say is a classic Republican, and yet you differ when it comes to the issue of abortion.
Again, they're totally opposite of me. I'm the consistent Republican, not them. I'm the one that believes in individual rights in the bedroom as well as the boardroom. So I'm actually much more consistent in our philosophy. I tell them that all the time. Abortion is the right to control one's body has to be first and foremost. If women are going to have rights and be equal before the law with men, they have to be able to control their body.
Toward the end of the Reagan administration, and founded a lobby group to rally support in the party. But getting that message through to the Republican establishment became an increasingly difficult task.
The rise of the evangelicals in the Republican Party really started to coalesce the mid-'70s to the end of the '70s, and obviously spiking very much with the election of Ronald Reagan. That's when this issue became much more important electorally in the platform for Republicans.
Many Australians looking in on this debate from the outside would see the Republicans' platform right now and argue that it isn't conservatism, it's actually extremism. Would you agree with that?
I wouldn't call it extremism, I'd call it authoritarian. The pro-life side, the evangelicals became so committed, they made it family events to go to rallies, family events to go to conventions and caucuses to make sure that this issue was preeminent in the Republican Party. The pro-choice side never had that kind of dedication, and now, obviously, we've paid the price.
What does the fight look like moving forward for the pro-choice?
Well, unfortunately, instead of one fight, we now, on the federal level, we have 50. It means money being wasted on a fight that could be going to help women and children. And that's the thing that just irritates me more than anything. It's just such a waste.
With millions of American women now unable to easily access an abortion, there are fears of a return to pre-Roe days, when backyard abortions risked lives.
I want to know what that world could look like. So I'm on my way to meet someone who was instrumental to the underground fight back when abortion was illegal decades ago.
If you were pregnant and not ready to have a child, women went to great lengths to figure out what they could do. Some did damage to themselves. Stories of women taking lye or using coat hangers or knitting needles, often creating infections and doing other internal damage.
In 1965, Heather Booth was a Chicago college student whose life was about to change.
A friend of mine told me that his sister was pregnant and nearly suicidal, and she wanted an abortion. Could I help her? And I found a doctor, Dr. TRM Howard. I spoke to him by phone. He made the arrangement. I told my friend about it, and I thought that was it. I thought it would be a one-time good deed.
But word spread, and Heather found herself at the center of a growing network.
Because 3 people talking about providing an abortion in Chicago in 1965 through 73 was a conspiracy to commit a felony. Rather than give out a name, we said, ask for Jane.
And so the Janes set about growing their network and reaching as many women as they could.
Sometimes you have to stand up to illegitimate authority.
This year, Heather featured in a timely HBO documentary telling their story, which has since become legendary.
Here's a poster that recognizes the work of Jane and mentions that between 1969 and 73, the women of Jane performed 11,000 abortions.
I mean, what do you think when you look at those pictures now?
I think that there's an enduring lesson that if you organize, you can change the world, and we need to.
But great risks were always present. In 1972, the Chicago Homicide Squad was tipped off about the Janes and raided their headquarters, arresting 7 women.
Those women facing the arrests, who were part of the Jane network, would have faced collectively over 100 years in prison. And while they were awaiting trial, Roe was approved by the Supreme Court. And so the cases were dropped.
The work you were doing, you were trying to build a new world, and in many ways you did achieve that. Do you feel like in some way that world has come crumbling down a little bit this year with the Supreme Court's ruling?
Right now, I think we are on a knife's edge between democracy and tyranny.
Do we need a new generation of Janes, do you think?
I applaud the work of those who are standing up to illegitimate authority. I applaud the work of those who are organizing. I applaud the work of those who every day are doing the support for people making this most intimate decision of our lives, of when or whether or with whom we'll have a child. And this represents the forces of the future.
These forces of the future have already begun to muster. Some are already risking prison to help women get access to an abortion.
There's a saying that I use a lot within our group: when injustice becomes law, resistance becomes mandatory. Several months ago, I watched a documentary on HBO called The Janes, and it had always stuck with me, just seeing these women that came together for a cause. It saved so many lives. And I said, I don't know how I'm gonna do this yet, but I'm gonna do it.
The day Roe v. Wade was overturned, Ireland made the decision to risk everything and subvert this red state's ban on abortion.
I think it was emotional for me in an overwhelming sense. And the only thing I kept thinking about was my daughter now has fewer rights than I've had. This is 2022, not the 1700s.
So how exactly are you procuring the medications and supplying them to women, given that this is illegal now in this state?
We get a request. The request is evaluated. We send their information to one of our medical teams. A person on the medical team makes contact with the individual. We have doctors, physician's assistants, nurses. We source the medications from out of the country. They are then sent to us in one of our safe harbor states. From there, they are forwarded to a number of different places before they finally make it into our hands, where we redistribute it and send it back out so that it gets to where it needs to be.
Ireland says their network consists of dozens of women across the country who began as a social media group. Now, she says they communicate offline via encrypted chats and VPNs to protect their identities.
So what exactly are the medications that you're providing?
So the medications are what's known as Rue 486, which is the misoprostol and the methotrexate. It's a 2 medication combo. You take one, and then 2 days later, you take the other 4 tablets.
That is a felony right now in this state. I mean, how do you feel about that?
It's terrifying. It's scary. I have my own family, but I have to do it. We cannot put women back in a place where they're resorting to coat hangers, knitting needles, bleach, turpentine, chemicals. Women are going to die, and if I can save or help just one woman, it's completely worth it, and I will do it again over and over and over. This whole clandestine operation, what other option is there? There is no other option right now.
We are the first generation, and we will abolish.
By returning abortion law to the states to decide, the Supreme Court has set the stage for bitter divisions and legal and political battles for decades to come.
We're far from the end. In the coming months and into next year, there's going to be a lot of developments, not only in Alabama, but other states.
For both sides, it's clear the end of Roe is not the end of this story.
Ain't no justice in this town. Ain't no justice in this town.
So we fought this in the 70s for ourselves. It was in the 90s for our daughters, and I'm fighting for my granddaughters now.
There's a contest for the future. We need to recruit people and get them engaged. We need to say these words to our friends, to our neighbors publicly. We need to raise money. We need to show up and show both our anger and our love for each other as we try and build what we called in the civil rights movement a beloved community.
Ain't no justice in this town. Ain't no justice in this town. Ain't no justice in this town.
Next week on Dateline, banned from playing sport. We meet the female athletes desperate to flee Afghanistan and survive a deadly game with the Taliban. And you can find more Dateline streaming on SBS On Demand.